Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We are going to be talking about mentorship, and we have two guest speakers here today, Rainey and Missy. Missy is actually one of our clients, and she is going to be talking about her win and how her organization is benefiting from Mentoring Complete, as well as talking about some of the benefits and the role of mentorship within growth and development. We're really excited for you all to be here. As we're going throughout, if you do have questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat and we will keep an eye on those. Before I introduce you to our lovely guest speakers, I am quickly just going to give a little plug to Mentoring Complete because we would love to show you some more of what we have to offer. Mentoring Complete is a platform that helps create and maintain mentoring relationships. We have advanced automation to match mentors and mentees. That's what you're seeing there with that precision matching. So it takes a lot of that admin lift off. We also offer Mentoring University, which kind of helps to get all of your participants into alignment on what mentoring is. And it's a really easy way for your mentors and mentees to connect. So at the end of this, we'll have a slide to show you how to get into contact with one of our team members, actually Patty, in case you want to learn more. All right, so as I mentioned today, we're going to go through a couple of topics. We're going to talk about the importance of mentorship, its role in professional development, some trends and some things that we're seeing in 2024. And then Missy is going to share her client success story, and then we will open the floor up to everyone else. Now, what I would like to do is introduce you to our guest speakers officially, and what I'll do is have you guys introduce yourselves if that's okay. First up is Missy. Welcome.
Thank you, Gabby, and good morning, everyone. As Gabby's already introduced me, I'm Missy Luna. I am the Director for Talent and Organizational Development for Achieve. I've actually been with Achieve, celebrating my 2-year anniversary about 2 weeks ago. So really, really happy to be a part of the organization and in particular my role, which was actually new. So not only am I currently managing and overseeing the mentor program, but also doing other talent development, career development initiatives as well. Prior to Achieve, I had my own consulting practice for about 10 years, really did anything that covers the talent life cycle. So helped with passive recruiting, helped with onboarding initiatives, processes, strategies, and then of course the development side and succession planning. So decided to leave the consulting and have joined the Achieve team and have enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Rainey?
Yes, hello everybody. Glad to be with you today. Basically, I started a mentoring consultancy about 34 years ago, and it was so focused what I wanted to do because I really felt that in organizations they were underutilizing their employees, and also the wealth of information that existed in organizations was not being shared with other employees. So the company was really not taking advantage of all the wealth it had. So after doing this manually for a number of years, obviously, which was very time consuming, I eventually created Mentoring Complete based upon our 34 years of best practices. And as a result of that, it makes the whole process a lot easier. It makes the ability to measure results a lot better, and also allows the company to be able to know exactly what benefits they got from the mentoring experience, both from an organizational perspective and from the mentor-mentee perspective. So I'm here today basically with the experience that I've had over the years to be able to share my thoughts with you, answer any questions you might have. I probably have heard that question somewhere along the lines of my career and probably have an answer for you. May not be the right one, but I will have an answer for you. So I look forward to continuing the discussion with you.
Yeah, thank you, Rainey, and thank you for being here. All right, so moving into our first topic, it's why is mentorship important? And Rainey, I'm going to throw this to you first. Of course, Missy, if you have anything to add, feel free to bring it in, as I will too. But Rainey, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. So when I first started doing this, my question is exactly that. Why is mentorship important? And there are two ways of looking at this. First of all, if you are a new employee to the organization, you come into that organization with a certain amount of trepidation, a certain amount of excitement, and you want to find out how you're going to fit in and what's going to happen with your career. So initially what happens is your boss becomes the most important relationship because they're going to basically train you into whatever task you've been assigned to do as part of your job. But after they do that, the question becomes, well, where do I go in this organization? What else can I do here? And that's not your job's the job of your boss to do that. That really is what a mentor can help you with. What a mentor can do is they can help you achieve your career goals, whatever they may be, introduce you to the network within the organization. They have people they know, they can introduce those people. They can specifically deal with the goals you have that are not just job related, but are related really to your career. Now, some of the goals might be related to your job. For example, you might want to say, I want to communicate better with my boss. That might be a goal. But the other goal might be, I really have an interest also in finance, but I don't know really much about it. So maybe a mentor can connect you to somebody in finance and you have that kind of an opportunity. The other really valuable benefit of having a mentor is that you have a very special relationship with the mentor. Unlike your boss, who oversees your development, your performance, does all kinds of reviews, and evaluates you. The mentor doesn't do that from that perspective. And also, since the mentor and the manager of the mentee should not communicate about the relationship at any point in time, this makes the relationship special. So it's confidential. So I can share with my mentor those issues that I will not share with my boss. For example, I might lack self-confidence. I might lack certain abilities that I think I should have. But I'm not going to share that with my boss because obviously I might be held accountable for that or might be evaluated in a negative light. So by sharing that with my mentor, I have an open relationship that allows me to be able to really focus on my personal development as well as my career development. And that becomes really, really important. And if you are a seasoned employee, the value of mentoring is exactly the same, which is that I can move within the organization. I can feel, rather than feeling stagnant at some point in time, and look elsewhere. The mentor can help open my eyes to other parts of the organization where I can participate and be a contributor and move up within the organization. And those are the kinds of reasons why mentorship is so important, but it's also important from a company perspective. And that is that by having an employee, by having a happier employee, an employee that feels that the company cares, they're going to stay loyal to the company and they're going to stay in the company much longer, given everything else being equal. And also, they're going to be able to help someone who might be able to move to other parts of the organization as the opportunities present themselves within that company. So it's mutually beneficial from the company and the employee, but also the mentor gains something. They gain insights from the mentee. They learn how well they might be able to communicate or provide feedback to the mentee. They may, in fact, discover skills they didn't know they had because when the mentee provides feedback, it might say, you're really good at this. And the mentor might say, I really didn't know that before, or I really didn't think that before. So there's a benefit there. And from a manager perspective, they benefit by virtue of having an employee that is more motivated, more confident, and probably will communicate a lot more effectively. And those are the kinds of reasons why mentorship is important to an organization. And I think that any organization that values the wealth of knowledge that exists in the organization should have a mentoring program. And there are no downsides to it, except maybe a bad experience from a mentor-mentee perspective, but those can be managed very easily. And in my years of experience, when I used to do pilot programs of about 20 pairs, 15, 20 pairs in a pilot program, maybe one pair out of 20 might not work. Most of them, they will work out at some level. And so for some of them, it will just be a professional relationship that will last for a period of time, usually a year or so. And for others, it might be a friendship that comes as a result of that experience. Both of those are wonderful in their own way, and each pair is different, so each pair will have a different experience. So those are kind of my thoughts about why mentorship is important. Let me stop there and see if anybody has any questions or anything to add.
While we're waiting to see if people put in questions, I think something that you hit on, Rainey, that I really appreciate about mentorship is that when I've had mentors, the bias that we bring to that meeting is really more about just caring for the other person and wanting the other person to succeed. Whereas with other development opportunities in work, sometimes you, like you said, you feel like you have to show up a certain way or have a certain like facade because you know that whether it's formal or not, people are looking at the way that you're behaving and that is coloring the way that they feel about you. And so having that unbiased, unrelated relationship outside of that is such a good way to kind of talk about some of those more difficult things or those things that are holding you back.
That's very true. And I think the way that gets done is you have to set up the relationship with certain boundaries. People need to understand what mentoring is and what it isn't, and what are the ground rules of that particular relationship within this particular organization itself. And so one of the issues that comes up is the issue of confidentiality. Okay, what is confidentiality? Well, most of us have a basic understanding of what that means. It means whatever you share with me is confidential. It basically stays here. But in an organization, it may be defined differently, and each person may define confidentiality differently. For example, in a mentoring relationship, I might say as a mentor, whatever I share with you, you're free to share with anybody else you want because there's nothing that I'm concerned about that I share with you. But the mentee might say, I don't want you to share anything about me to anybody else in the organization. Everything that I share here is to stay here. And that forms the framework for the relationship. The way the framework is built is you define confidentiality, you define how frequently you're going to meet based upon program guidelines, and you have your checkpoints throughout the period of time so you can check in with the peers and see how things are going so that both parties are on the same page. What's really important in mentoring is to understand what mentoring is because it gets confused with coaching all the time. People think, well, mentoring is like coaching, and it's not. They're very different. Coaching is focused on performance. Mentoring is focused on relationship. And therefore, that's the key difference. And in coaching, generally, there's my managers involved because the reason I'm being coached is because they brought somebody in to help me in a certain area. Whereas in mentoring, the mentor never communicates with the manager of the mentee at any point in time for any reason about the mentoring relationship. Having this ironclad rule makes the mentee feel safe so they can have this conversation freely and openly in ways they wouldn't have with anybody else. Because the most important thing they're going to talk about is their manager, because that's the most important relation they have in the company. And so what's important is that managers, when you tell them that you cannot communicate with their mentor about the mentoring relationship, can get a little insecure. So it's important to set up some guidelines to say something like this. It is not appropriate for a mentor to undermine a manager, no matter what the manager does. It's just not an appropriate thing to do. If a mentee has an issue with their manager, the key role of the mentor is to facilitate helping them to be able to deal with that. That may be communicating differently. It might mean going to HR because there may be an issue that has to be dealt with HR, but they're not to say, oh, you know what, your manager is terrible about that. They're not really doing a good job. Let me tell you what you should do. That's really important. So therefore, managers need to be told that the mentor may not communicate, may not undermine them in the mentoring relationship. And that makes the manager feel a little bit more comfortable. I'm not sure they're always totally comfortable, but at least that fear that you might undermine them might be the issue. Let me give you an example, if I can, that I think is probably one that occurs maybe a little too often. In a company that I dealt with at one point in time, before I came in, they had a mentoring program. And the mentoring program was such that the manager would talk about talent development in a committee, and the mentor would talk about talent development with that particular mentee in that committee. So when there was a discussion about what to do with that particular employee in terms of moving them up or down, the manager might have one opinion, and the mentor might have a different opinion. So what do you do there? Well, if you go by the mentor's opinion, you're undermining the manager. And at that point in time, that manager will tell every other manager that, you know what, you got to be careful about this mentoring program because they're going to undermine you. So the best thing to do is to never involve the mentor into a talent development discussion. It should be off the books because it's not about talent development in that sense, the hierarchical sense. It's about development professionally in a broader sense. So,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, no, it makes me think about when I was a teacher. We used to say if the student is the car, the parents are the front passenger wheel, and I'm the front driver wheel, and if one of your tires is flat, it's going to impact the overall car, right? So we kind of all want to be on the same team, making sure that the car is still running in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's really, really important. And I think that the person who drives this relationship is the mentee, not the mentor.
Mm-hmm.
That's really an important difference. In my manager role, I mean, I'm managing that employee, but in mentoring, it's a mentee that really decides how that relationship's going to work. For example, I decide what goals I want as a mentee, I decide sort of how the guidelines will apply to me as a mentee. I can decide how often I'm going to be in touch with my mentor, depending on what the requirements are. So I'm in control on a certain level. Certainly, the mentor has something to do with this, obviously, because they're going to guide the mentee through this relationship. But it's mine to make or break. It's not the mentor's to make or break. It's mine to make or break. So I can invest it as much as I want to, or as little as I want to. And the other important thing is to make sure that this is considered a professional relationship. So you don't want to confuse things. So, for example, we don't encourage people to go out after hours, to go out to dinner and have a drink and have this kind of discussion because it can blur the lines at that point. So it's really important to make things professional. Meet at lunch, meet at company headquarters, meet at meetings, whatever the case may be, but to keep it professional throughout the entire process. It may develop into a friendship, and that's fine. But even that should be defined as to what that means, particularly after the relationship is over. At the end of a 1 year program, if it's 1 year or 6 months, there should be a process whereby the mentor and mentee discuss what was the experience was like for them as mentor and mentee and how they wish to proceed after this program is over. For example, some mentors might say, I've enjoyed this experience the last year with you, but I want to be in the mentoring program again as a mentor, and I already have enough on my plate. I really cannot be available to you on a regular basis, but I can be available to you if you need me at any point in time. I will do that, but I really cannot continue in a formal way. Whereas some other mentors might say, or mentee might say, I feel I've gotten a lot out of this relationship, but I really would like to fly out on my own right now, and so I would rather not feel like I have to rely on you. So can I contact you when I need you? But those kinds of things have to be defined because if you just end the relationship without that conversation, I've been in situations where mentees would say to me, I was in a program and we had this great relationship, but I never heard from my person again. And they feel personally hurt. I mean, you can see the hurt on their face. That's how powerful a mentor relationship can be. It can be so personal and so powerful that the loss of that without having a conversation about that can be hurtful. So that's why we always have what we call a closing event where you have this conversation over the course of 1 or 2 meetings to be able to discuss where you want to go forward.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of expectations. And Missy, I've seen you in the chat kind of talking about that too. So I'd love to hear from you about any of this, but also, how mentorship contributes to growth and development overall. And Rainey, you're also welcome to come in here as we're talking as well.
Yeah, Rainey actually touched on quite a few of the pieces that connect to career development, right? It can help with, not only their development and the learning process itself, they're also building network. And in the way we've set up the program, it's actually, and their network with the mentor and mentee are from different parts of the organization. So not only are they getting an opportunity to work with a mentor who can provide that unbiased feedback and thoughts and guidance, they're also getting exposed to a different side of Achieve. So how we set up the program to make sure that it also connects to our core values is the sense of collaborate, right? So they're bringing problems or issues they're having, they're collaborating with their mentor. So that covers one. And then the sense of care, right? So making sure that they've got somebody there that they can lean on in times of need, to Rainey's point, that you may not always want necessarily the manager to be doing. And then they get better, right? So providing them feedback in the process. It's not just the learning component, but they're actually giving them honest feedback of things that they can do to help reach whatever short-term and long-term goals they have. And then, the most important part, at least for us in that career development, is they're getting an opportunity to be exposed from an internal mobility perspective, right? So they may not know the career paths that currently exist inside the organization. So having someone like a mentor be there and help them work not only on what the goals that they're trying to achieve, but also where inside the organization, and who better to help the employee than that mentor really guide the mentee into the direction based on what career paths currently exist. And in some cases, they may not even know what those are. So the mentors and mentee relationship, that would be another component that really helps set up the individual for success when it comes to their own career journey. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah. And Missy, you brought up a really good point that I think I missed, but you said that the mentors are from a different part of the organization, and I think that's a really important component. That way, you don't get into this conflict that I mentioned earlier about the
Yeah.
mentor talking to the manager. So that's really important component. So I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah, I agree, Rainey. And I know, Candace, you had a question around, if there should be guidelines to the in the mentorship, and that's a definite yes, right? There needs to be some level of understanding, both from an expectation, but then how they should be having the relationship, right? Part of that you can provide the structure inside the mentor program, but the other part really comes from that first initial dialogue where they get an opportunity to first meet and greet each other. It's a really good opportunity for them to add that expectation piece. So the program itself has the guidelines set, but then you also make sure that they themselves with their relationship have guidelines set.
Now, do
Yeah.
you use a mentoring agreement, Missy?
I'm sorry, Rainey,
Do
can
you
you?
use a mentoring agreement?
No, we don't use a mentor agreement. Matter of fact, we provide some level of structure, Rainey, but not too much structure because we don't want them to all of a sudden feel like it's a checklist item.
Yeah.
So for us, no, we don't.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and each company is different. And I was simply what I really wanted to say is that a mentoring agreement is one of those tools you can use to go through the guidelines that Missy's talking about. You may have a different process, but it's the same idea, which is you've got to have a conversation. You got to know what those are. It's good.
Right. Yeah. And I know we're actually kind of doing our do's and don'ts here. I know I put one down for my part about that of not like, don't overload your participants with required activities, that it's important to have some of those standard checkpoints so that we have some structure, but we want to maintain some of that flexibility because if we are controlling it too much, that could really limit the growth and development of those pairs if they feel like they're too tied into this little box of things that they have to do.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. While we're kind of here, do we have any other do's and don'ts that we didn't get to touch on that you guys would like to share with the group?
Sure, I'd love to, if that's okay with you, Rainey, if I could start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the first things that I strongly recommend is don't make the program mandatory, right? It really needs to be a voluntary based experience. And the reason is because the relationship itself needs to operate from a place of want. And it also allows then that those that are involved in part of the program are really engaged. So that's the first one that comes to my mind. The other thing I would say for at least for Achieve, we really didn't want to assume that one program fits all. So we've based on who the audience and each pilot originally that went, we started them actually with our ERGs. Well, each program itself, because each ERG looked different and their development needs looked different, so was the program itself. So for us, we made the decision not to assume a one size fits all type model worked well within the organization. The other thing that's super important is to have those feedback or mechanisms, ways to red flag when there are problems. The really neat thing with Mentoring Complete is you have the ability to leverage the surveys in such a way that if somebody answers the question a certain way, it automatically creates a red flag and then lets the program manager know immediately when there's a problem with one of the relationships. So making sure that you address that problem or feedback in real time is equally as important. We do the same when we get feedback about making adjustments to the mentor program. We actually take the feedback in real time and then adjust the program and then follow through with the individuals who provided that feedback to let them know that we were listening and actually applying their feedback. And we've watched this higher degree of involvement as we do that. Matter of fact, we've seen repeat mentors want to be part of the program because they themselves have found just as much value from it as the mentee has. The other thing we've already talked about is make sure you set clear expectations, some structure, and provide the training. The last, and I'm just going to naturally do this plug for Mentoring Complete because it's been one of my most impressive parts. It's the pairing, the matching that takes place inside the system. If you don't have something that helps you match thoughtfully, you could run into real problems with the actual pairing and experience of the mentor program. And if you have a bad experience, that follows you. And you don't want that bad experience to impact future mentor programs. So the matching part is really, really important.
Right. Yeah. And we know, like, if you have a good experience, you might tell 3 to 5 people, like your close friends. But if you have a bad experience, you're going to make sure everyone knows about it, right? So definitely important to pay attention to that for sure. Rainey, any do's and don'ts that you want to bring up?
Absolutely. I think one of the things you really want to make sure you have is you've got full support of top management for this, because I think that it requires some resources to be utilized. For example, I would recommend you have a mentoring program manager. That's a person that both mentors and mentees and mentee managers can go to if they feel there's an issue within the relationship or within the program. So it's important to really have that. I think that you want to make sure you have a program manager who, in fact, is committed to doing what needs to be done. It's not anything that requires a full-time job, but it's something you can add to somebody's job. But when you have an online system that render complete, everything's being done for you. So it's just about monitoring and going through the hotspots. If you train people properly, got a good program, you should have very few issues to begin with. And that brings us to my other point, which is you have to train people. Now, that means not training the mentees only, but training the mentors on the same relationship and training managers of mentees to understand what this relationship is all about and what it isn't. By having those three components, those three people involved, it's a triangle that exists within the mentoring program, along with the mentoring program manager. It's important that all three parties understand the limits and the purpose of the program so that they don't feel threatened or whatever. Another don't is mentors should not do most of the talking in the session. That should be up to the mentee, because that's what they're there for. And if you just go there and just extrapolate and talk about or rate about your experience and what have you, that's not really what mentoring is. Mentoring is about listening. You need to do more listening on the part of the mentor so you can understand where the mentee is coming from. Also, don't expect the mentee to become a clone of who you are, because that's not the purpose of mentoring. And sometimes people say things like, "I'm a mentor, and I told my person to do something." Well, I'll give you an example actually, which is really a bad example, but I mean it's a good example of a bad example. So I did a program with a famous bank many years ago, and the president of the company wanted to be a mentor, and I advised against it because obviously the president of the company is the most important person in the organization, and a mentee who's being paired with the president has to succeed. They can't afford to fail, because if they fail, they're out of a job. So it's threatening for the mentee to be involved. So I advised the president not to be involved, and he was insistent, no, I've done mentoring before, I want to be involved. And he wouldn't attend the training. No, I know how to do this, not to bother with training, didn't do that. So we had a committee of individuals, and it had to be a diversity committee. And the diversity committee said, in no way am I going to recommend a diverse person to that white president. And so we assigned a white female, because I think it was a female only mentoring program. And she had 1 or 2 sessions with him. He came down to the program manager and said, "You know what? I don't think this is working because she's not following my advice." And so her career was over in that organization at this point in time. Whatever she did wasn't going to matter. Fortunately for her, he got fired a few weeks later, so it solved itself. But that's the kind of thing that you want to ensure you don't have, is somebody who hasn't trained and thinks they know what they're doing. So those are a couple of do's and don'ts that off the top of my head.
Yeah, thanks, Rainey. And Missy, you guys covered everything that I had in my list, so I'm glad that we're kind of all on the same page and that you hit on those top points. Anything else you want to add here, or are we good to move into trends? Trends it is. All right. So there are a few trends in mentorship that we're seeing in 2024. You'll see some of them that I brought up here. The first one that we've been seeing a lot is organizations championing DEI, not just in employee resource groups, but in the pairings themselves. Harvard Business Review last year reported that 71% of mentors are the same gender or race as their mentees. And a lot of organizations are pushing back against that. So finding ways to make sure that they are different genders or they are different race, or maybe they're in a different department or any of those things. Particularly with dispersed workers, you have the opportunity, especially if you're international, to have people from different countries even pair together so that you get some more of those different perspectives. The second one is the shift to virtual. So again, with dispersed workers post-COVID, we already had people moving more and more online. But now that we're kind of out of COVID, we're still seeing the push toward virtual due to the added access that it gives people. So maybe I don't have an hour out of my workday to sit with somebody, or I don't have an hour every Wednesday to meet up at a coffee shop or something to have that discussion, but I can do something over Zoom, or I can connect, over GChat or whatever, having those relationships more accessible and more convenient is really why organizations are pushing toward that. You do still have a lot of in-person mentorship opportunities, but virtual is becoming more and more popular. And the last big trend that we're seeing is the trend towards social learning. This I found super interesting as I was reading about it, because we're seeing that learning within organizations is shifting away from just the LMS and toward utilizing the network that you have of people around you. By being able to socially learn about your role and other roles, by being able to go to other people in your organization, this helps to combat silos in the organization, like Missy was saying, pairing people from different departments. You're going to get totally new ideas that you otherwise may not have been able to. Another big benefit is immediate feedback. And there's a book called Peak. And one of the things that it talks about in growth and development is that you can only grow so far on your own. And the way to get better beyond that is to have somebody with the wisdom and the background to say, hey, this one specific thing is the thing that if you worked on, it would take you to the next level. So having that outside party be able to kind of look in and say, here's the thing, maybe here's how I did it, that gives you kind of like like in Candyland, you get to skip 10 spaces or something because you get to jump ahead with the quick hints that people were able to give you. And that kind of lands onto the other part of the social learning, which is that your mentor can really pinpoint the exact area that you need to work on and give you those shortcuts, as well as highlighting resources that you may need to move the needle. Rainey, Missy, anything you want to add to that, or any other trends that you've seen?
I don't have any other trends, but just to clarify, I think I saw something in chat about somebody had a question for me, but I can't see it, so I don't know if you're seeing it or what have you. But it had to do with external mentors, I believe.
Yeah, so Rainey, the question was, are there any tips when you're leveraging external mentors? And we don't actually leverage external mentors, so I couldn't answer that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we have, and I'll send this over to you, Rainey, in just one second. I know I work with many clients who only work with external mentees, or they only work with external mentors. Specifically, the one I'm thinking about is a network of colleges, and they work with college students that are not a part of that network. The best advice that I have that I saw them succeed with is really setting those expectations and making sure everyone is in alignment about what this relationship should look like. Mentoring University, which is part of our Mentoring Complete program, was incredibly invaluable to them because they assigned it as kind of like a pre-mentorship exercise. And by going through those courses, that course material, everyone came into the mentorship program with the idea of this is what a mentor is, this is what a mentee is, this is what a relationship looks like, these are the things it shouldn't look like, and kind of getting everyone on the same page. But Rainey, I don't know if you had something to add to that.
I think that I've known organizations, I've been in organizations where they've done external mentors. It really depends, and they've usually been professional associations. I think it really depends. They're both valuable. I mean, some people have both, and that's great. I think it's just a question. If you're an organization, the question becomes, why do you want an external mentor? Because the external mentor will probably not be familiar with your culture or have the networks within the organization. So we want to really be clear what that particular objective is external mentor versus what the internal mentor's objectives are, because they won't be the same. And so they're both valuable. It's just a question of being clear on the expectations, the guidelines, as Gabby is saying.
Yeah. Hopefully that answered, and we will get back into it as well. Michelle, I did just post the link to that book I was talking about. Highly recommend. It's great and it's an easy read. All right. Well, with that, we're going to pass it over to you, Missy, so that we can hear about your specific experience.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it because I've got a couple of questions inside the chat that I think will be able to be addressed. But for the audience, if there are things that you're curious about that I've not mentioned, just drop it in the chat and we'll make sure to touch on them. So when I came into Achieve, one of the first initiatives that was laid down as a priority was the mentor program. And we had actually purchased Mentoring Complete prior to me coming and being onboarded. Having said that, we really didn't have the staff and time to develop the program internally. So Mentoring Complete actually did it for us, created our program, helped us put in the surveys, make sure that the matching process was all created. And it really, really helped with the initial pilot. Then when I was hired, what I did was ask a ton of questions around what they were actually looking for inside a mentor program. And what I had gotten after meeting with multiple leaders and individuals across Achieve was they were really wanting to leverage and utilize Mentoring Complete in a customized way, right? So depending upon what ERG was trying to accomplish with their groups, whether it's career development, professional development, in some cases it was actually connected more to leadership development. We customized the experience by taking what Mentoring Complete had already created and then making some of our own forms that would ask certain questions, have them do certain type of activities together that touched on those parts. So that would be the first thing that I realized we needed to do. The second thing that was really neat that I saw inside Mentoring Complete was what Gabby touched on, which is the Mentoring University. There are so many resources and tools that are located in the Mentor University. It helped speed up the process for me as I was developing out the mentor program because I was able to leverage a lot of things that were already created. The other thing and part of the experience was figuring out how to do the program, because you can either do it where you run them more like a group or a cohort or a one-on-one relationship. And so for us, we decided the first rounds, the first pilots, we really wanted to focus on a one-on-one experience and then kept the pilots small. We kept them small for a couple of reasons. One, we needed to work through any kind of issues that we were running with the customized forms we created inside Mentoring Complete. We also needed smaller samples so we could bite size, know from the learning experience of what we need to keep and what we need to adjust. So we began our program with the ERGs. Matter of fact, Freedom Riders was our very first ERG to go through the mentor program. And we had literally 5 mentors and 5 mentees. Then we launched shortly after that 2 more that were larger pilots, one with the She Achieves ERG. That one actually reached 25 mentors and 25 mentees. As you can see, we slowly began to increase our numbers as we were figuring out the things that were working, the things that weren't working. The other thing that we learned in the process was how powerful the matching part inside Mentoring Complete was for us. So we did not necessarily take the immediate match, the highest match. And this was one of the questions inside the chat that I'll make sure to address. We decided to do something called the 3 matching process. So what it does is basically provide you the top 3 mentors per mentee that had the highest percent match. And for us, we decided if they had around a 70% match, we felt pretty confident based on the few pilots we had run. And so then we also, tried to, because we needed to make sure that they weren't necessarily being matched with someone from the same department. That's why we decided to do the 3 pairing matching, is because it gave us some room to diversify who they were going to actually be matched with. We are now on our 21st mentor program that's been launched. The feedback has been outstanding. We've only had, literally, I kid you not, one bad pairing, and it wasn't necessarily because of the match. It was really more about the fact that the mentor just didn't have the time and really should not have dedicated and committed to being part of the program based on his workload. It really didn't have to do with regards to the match themselves. So really, I can't reiterate how happy we are with how the mentor programs have been launched. They're being very well received. I will say our biggest problem, we have two. One, we customize the forms. So sometimes that creates bugs and glitches inside Mentoring Complete, but we've got an outstanding account management team that helps us work through those bugs as we find them. But really the primary challenge is mentoring fatigue. So because we are limited internally and do look for certain levels in mentorship or a diversification of our mentor list, it means that we could need to leverage a mentor more than just one time. So I would say that for us, that's been our largest challenge, is just making sure that we're doing certain things to reinforce and reward our mentors who are very active in supporting the various mentor programs as we launch them through Achieve. Any questions? Did I answer everybody's questions in that? Okay, good. How long are the programs? For us, we set them up to be about a 3-month long program. That's going to slightly change because we are now actually incorporating the mentor program as part of our high potential program. It's referred to as Elevate. It's actually, we call it our growth readiness program. It's kind of a long story philosophically, but we now are leveraging it into the Elevate program. So now it's changing from a 4-month period to actually over 8 months. And they're doing different kind of activities together as part of the program. It goes beyond just the structured content, but they don't meet as often as what they were meeting when it was more like a 2 to 3 month program. They have 4 sessions. They do one meet and greet, and then depending upon what the ERG or the focus area is for career development, they meet another 3 times. While we provide them the structure, I forgot to mention this, want to make sure I do. While we provide them structure, we reinforce and tell them regularly, does not mean you have to keep it. That provides them the flexibility. So if the mentee has some other issue or topic that comes up, they don't feel pressure that they have to follow along with the scripted structure, but it's there in case they want to use it. And all of the scripted structure has to connect or does connect back to either career development, some topic on professional development, or career pathing, something that connects with them for career development. Other
Yeah.
questions?
While we're looking through those, I would just add from other clients' perspective, most commonly I see between a 9 and 12-month program, but they aren't meeting as frequently. This could be like maybe once a month or twice a month that they're meeting, and the group meetings where everyone comes back together are going to be in the meet and greet at like the midpoint and then at the end to kind of close things off.
Yeah, that's the same with us too, Gabby. We have a kickoff introduction. We do mentor training. We do mentee training. So they're getting formalized training as part of the experience. They go into their meet and greet. And at the end, there's a closing event where we all come back together. Uh,
Those are my favorite events. If I can shadow on them, I'm like, yeah, I want to go to the party after. I like hearing about all the successes.
well, then it does create some problem to that too, Gabby, when you're working from a virtual world.
Right.
So figuring out how to make that a really meaningful experience is really important. So for us, some of the things that we do is we we'll send them different things in the mail to
Oh,
celebrate getting through the program. Even the small little thing like a handwritten note, I can't tell you, it's just done fabulous things for the mentors keeping engaged with us.
yeah.
So having to really be thoughtful about how you can deliver this if you have such a large group that's virtual.
Yeah, that's awesome. Also, as a hint to anybody, if you're interested, on Amazon, they sell paper that is made out of flower seeds. So you can write on it and then people can plant it. And I had a client do this because they're looking to miss growth. So they actually had their mentees write their goal on the paper and then plant it. And that way, like as they physically were helping the plant grow, it would remind them of their own goals. And I was like, that is the cutest thing I've ever heard of, and I love it. So if anyone else wants to do that, I think that sounds great. And it's kind of like that manifest mentality, right? If you continue to think about it all the time.
That's a great idea. I think I need to be capitalizing on that.
I thought it sounded fun. I was like, okay, yeah. Well, why not?
Yeah, because it's Candace here from Future Solutions, and I see there was a couple of questions that we posted here. And I have no sort of blog, so I don't think everyone on the points. And I guess it sounds like it's mentoring complete will do a match, but is there a survey that's done? How do you choose who's going to be a mentor? How do you choose the employees that are going to be mentors? How do you decide that?
Yeah, so I can talk about the matching, but Missy or Rainey, is there anything you want to touch on those other topics first?
Yeah, I think that when you create your program, you're looking for five years. So, for example, some programs, and then you might have to be some company 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, might have to have a certain lot of experience in certain areas, and so on. Same thing for a mentor. You know, they've been with the company maybe 5 years, close to 1 year. So you create these kind of guidelines, and then you send that out to qualified. It's those protocol that you're going to have. I mean, you certainly can offer mentoring population because you can do that with mentoring complete. You can have what we call self-directed mentoring, where a mentee goes into the pool, finds a mentor, and they establish this relationship. So if you can do that, I think that's a very nice way of being able to tap into the resources of the company. But if you're looking for what I would call a more intimate experience, probably a one-on-one relationship is going to provide that for you more so than obviously the other one. And so usually when you ask people, mentees, what they want, they probably would say, I want to have a one-on-one relationship with someone in that kind of a situation. And I think somebody also asked a question about frequency of contact. I know Missy talked about theirs. I would say in the industry as a rule, the golden standard is 2 times a month or every other week. Anything more than that tends to be too heavy a burden on the mentor. So you want to make sure that what you're asking mentors to do is commensurate with what they can do, and not overburden them with you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that. That's why I talk about setting up the framework with certain guidelines that allow a lot of flexibility, but to stay within that framework.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Missy, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Candace, I want to say outside of the frequency, what was the other thing that you feel or think you might need a little bit more information on?
Well, Rainey mentioned, like, said it well. I think we go to our succession plan and decide who's our next level, heading up the ladder to business unit leader or executive level. But mentors, I mean, that's going to be really important to choose a mentor.
Yeah. So Candace, a couple of things. For us, we have not launched it across Achieve. And to your point, we're actually being selective in where we're starting them. So the ERGs were our first. The high potential program succession planning, that's the second. And so there is a selective process. Choosing the mentors is really more of looking at our talent base and identifying who has these different type of experience, has an interest. To Rainey's point, we have certain expectations, requirements that the mentor has to have, including the fact they have to be comfortable committing to the amount of time. So being really clear on how much of a time commitment for the mentors is something that we learned really early on when we were piloting the program. And then I would say choosing the mentors really is more or less just looking across broadly at your talent and then making sure that you're being thoughtful about the level and the experience that they bring to the experience for the mentee, even before you look at who matches with what. The other thing I would say we've done is we've introduced a cohort program. So while you have a one-on-one relationship with the mentor, the other piece that they really enjoy is the coming back together as a group to do different kind of learnings. And so as opposed to a mentor, we've actually just now introduced a concept called a cohort sponsor. And the cohort sponsor is a secondary layer of a what we refer to as the circle of influence that we're creating around that succession planning and that high potential program. So just to give you a little bit more information, a little differently than what you would normally see with just a straight mentor program.
Right. And I would add to start with the goal of the program, and then finding your people tends to be a little bit easier. If you are trying to, in the case of Missy, find a program for people to focus on moving up in their career and specifically like high potential folks, then you know exactly which pool you're looking at. Versus
Yeah.
if you have a mentoring for new people that you just brought on and it's like a buddy system that you're starting, then you know you're going to be looking at new hires and folks who are really good at helping people move through that initial onboarding and getting to know the organization.
Yeah. And all these pieces we're touching on, to Rainey's point, it really goes back to the framework, making sure that you put in the time in the very beginning to build that framework out so it helps you move faster to get the buy-in that you need inside the organization, along with more clarity on what to expect as part of the program.
I'm scrolling through questions here. I think we answered the ones in the chat, but if there are any that you don't think we answered and you want to come off mute or throw it in the chat again, please feel free. We want to open the floor to all of you so we can answer your most important questions. Or your not important questions. We can also answer those.
Could I just jump in and say to Candice around the form that you mentors and mentees fill out? I'd love to give you a demo of how that works and how that runs in. I think Gabby's going to put a QR code with my calendar in if you want to book some time. That would be perfect. And you can have as much of my time as you want.
Yes, and thank you for saying that, Patty. Obviously, I would say schedule a demo with Patty if you want to get a look at it. He's fun to talk to, and it's fun to actually see it in the program. From a high-level overview, the way that the matching score is derived is from something that we call a matching form. It's totally customizable, so if a client would like to change it, they can, but it does come pre-made. Everything within Mentoring Complete is pretty turnkey for just the basics, and you can expand on that as you want. But basically, all of the participants fill out the mentorship form, or I'm sorry, the matching form. And then based on those answers, there's an algorithm that puts together a percentage. We have found that if there is a matching score of around 70%, then that has a 90% success rate. So you're looking for that 70% number, and then you can further refine because maybe these people have a really high match score, but the goals that they have aren't really going to go well together. So we pick this other person who might be a little bit lower, but is better equipped to help that mentee. All right, and I know we're in our last minute here, so I do want to say thank you to both Missy and Rainey for being here and for sharing all of your expertise and wisdom, as well as, if anyone has any last minute questions that they want to throw out, feel free. Or Missy, Rainey, anything that you want to add here as we wrap up?
I would just want to add one thing about the metrics. I see that in the chat. I should have figured out in the chat earlier, but anyway. And that is when you measure mentoring, yes, you want to measure metrics because that's why the company wants to invest and see what the gains are. But for me, what was most important is the quality of the relationship. Did they have a transformational experience being together? And that to me was always, because when we get feedback, we get things people would say, this changed my life or it saved my career, those kinds of things. That to me is most valuable because that I know created the relationship that I was hoping they would create.
Yeah. Yeah. Get those stories and share them too. Yes.
I just
Okay.
want to say thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Appreciate getting to partner with Rainey and learn from his wisdom as well. So if anyone has, if you have other questions that come up later, feel free to reach out to me. Also love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And I shamelessly plug Mentoring Complete. Their pairing matching system is honestly the best I've seen, and that includes when I was consulting. So I've enjoyed that particular piece, and it's really helped make our program more successful.
It also just gives you insight into who you have in your organization. I get a little snoopy and look through it. I'm like, what is it that people are interested in working on? Who are the people that work really well together? Because you might find folks that you would have never paired in any other way, but here they work really well together. Yeah. Again, thank you all so much for being here. This was recorded, so we will send out the recording as well as some resources and contact info for Missy and Rainey and Patty, should you have any questions. But again, thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Take care.